Hello gamers, Powered Heal here, and today we're going to be talking about bait pre-BiS items. And I thought this would be a really good time to do this because the raid is coming out in 2 days. People are probably trying to, do last minute dungeons, get every last piece of gear, get completely ready, get full BiS for the raid, stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to just make a video to let you guys know certain things that I think are just not worth it to do. Right, specifically in terms of the gear, and I'll kind of talk about some alternatives that you can do that I think will be better for you to spend your time doing, especially if you have limited time, right? Because that's what we're kind of about in this channel, is maximizing the value of your time. So let's get right into things. I have a normal pre-BiS thing put up right here. Not all of this. I'll kind of go through each item very quickly, and I'll talk about the ones that I think are bait and stuff like that, right? So I think the first item right here, the Crimson Fell Hat, this is typically, you see it on BiS lists a lot. Now this doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily that hard to get, but as you guys know, I prefer the green helm in my other pre-BiS video, that you get it from one of the quests in Strat. Basically, it's a 20 intellect helm. It's like Helm of the Pertinent, I believe, with 6 MP5. And I think it's a fantastic alternate option to Crimson Fell Hat. For certain things, you could argue that it's even better, right? Depending on the use case exactly. The problem with Crimson Fell Hat is that depending on what you're having to do, if you're having to straight pug, this can be a very difficult item to get, right? Because it's just, it's a damage item. Lots of mages want this item. And there's probably always going to be at least one caster in your run, so you're rolling against at least one other person for it, then it has to drop on top of it. Undead Strat is not necessarily a hard instance to clear, but it's not a super easy instance to clear. There is a farm you can do now, where you kind of go in and just farm the boss for this item, right? Because I think he spawns in a different position depending on where you enter Strat. So, that is something you could do if you really wanted this, but I would not spend a ton of time trying to get this item, is basically what I'm trying to tell you. Because you can get a free quest item that's guaranteed. It's also really, really good. And I would just use that item if you're concerned about your time. Another thing is this slot is very temporary because your tier 2 helm, especially on Horde, since there's not that many priests in the raid, is very easy to get. And you'll probably be getting it relatively soon from Onyxia, right? So this is not an item that's going to last you any long period of time either. So moving on, animated chain necklace. Now, this item, I feel is already, it has no int, no regen on it really, aside from a tiny bit of spirit. It's the only neck with a significant amount of plus healing in this phase, in this particular version of the game. So that's kind of interesting, right? But ultimately, I think it's just not as good of an item as people tend to think, especially on Priest, where, a lot of the plus healing is going to go through the coefficient. On things like Power Word Shield, you're only getting 10% of it. On things like Flash Heal, you're only getting 40% of it, right? Renew, you get 100% of it, but it's really hard to use. So pragmatically, it's very difficult to make use of every last point of plus healing on Priest. So I'm already not super high on this item, as you guys knew, and I prefer using the neck from Drac, from UBRS, the final boss there. However, it's still a decent item. It's just that this tends to have a lower drop rate, in my opinion. I tried, in 2019 Classic, I wanted to have all the items so I could kind of, have an item for every situation, essentially, right? And this is one of the items I tried to obtain, and it took me quite a few strat runs before I actually got the neck. I actually got it relatively quickly this time, but it can be difficult to get. Obviously, it's one of the later bosses in the instance too, so this is not really one where people are doing it the 3 boss starter strat type runs, right? I think that kind of gets excluded because you have to kill the abominations and stuff like that. So just harder to get than some of the other strat pieces. And yeah, I would not break your back trying to get this. Like, I would just get the UBRS neck instead. A lot of people tend to not like that one, so you'll have a relatively easy chance of getting it, and it seems to drop a lot. So that's a great alternative option if this is giving you trouble to find, right? Going into the cloak, so this is actually the wrong cloak here, but the one that's supposed to be here that people often recommend on the BiS is like the Archivist's cloak, and that's the one that drops from the Archivist in Live Strat. And basically there's kind of two versions that are often recommended. There's a plus healing version and there's an owl version. So the plus healing one is just like, it's MP5 with like 30 plus healing on it, I think. And then there's another version that's just MP5 with 10 int and 10 spirit. So, you know, those are both decent cloak options. The problem is they tend to be difficult to get, because sometimes I think the boss doesn't even drop them. And then the cloak can be of a number of different things, right? So it doesn't have to be of healing or of the owl. So, and Strat Live is also just an instance that is very much a pain in the you-know-what, in my opinion. I think it's actually one of the like worst instances in the game in terms of just being really annoying, and there's a lot that can go wrong if you don't have a good group. So if you're pugging, it's one of those instances that's just very vulnerable to frustration. So ironically, this is a pretty decent option that you can go with. This is from the Jinta lore quest line. It's got intellect, bit of plus healing, it's fine. The Spirit Caster Cape from BRD is another great option you can go with, right? So I think there's deterministic options, or options you're going to have a lot more chances at, that are just much better than these. Also, this is something that you know is not long for this world, because it's going to be replaced very quickly by the Cosmic Cloak from Dire Maul, which is relatively easy to get, or the Height of the Wild, if you want to go that route. I might make a video on Height of the Wild specifically, but it is something that you can opt to get, and it is obviously very deterministic and way better than this. So yeah, just not, like, you're better off actually farming the gold for Height of the Wild and like waiting a phase than kind of cranking out Strat Live runs with the explicit purpose of getting a back from there, right? So the chest is not going to be part of this conversation because it's just really good, right? These, I did want to mention quickly that sometimes these are very expensive. I don't know what they're going to be on your particular server. I think I saw a pair go up for like 150 gold. To put things in perspective, if you get Magisters, I bought a pair of Magister's cuffs like about 3 days ago for 16 gold, and they have 2 less intellect. You know what I mean? And they have more spirit. They're probably basically like an equivalent item at least, potentially even a little bit better if you're factoring in, you know, having the flexibility of opting into the Magister's 4-piece with the more Magister pieces you get, right? So I think these are just a very overrated item unless you get them for cheap. So yeah, don't worry. There's tons of options you can go for Bracer Enchant. Worst case scenario, if you're super poor, the Rend quest line, if you're Horde side, the Bracers, they're like, I think 9 int, 15 spirit. Kind of like the opposite. You'd rather them be 15 spirit or 15 int, 9 spirit, but you know, they're still pretty good. And there's tons of options you can go with for Bracers, but I would just do Magister's Bracers. They're much cheaper than this, typically, right? Hammer of Grace, another thing. This is, you know, these are typically considered Pre-BiS items. A couple problems with these, right? If you can find vault runs, it's pretty easy to get the hammer, but the problem is if you don't have a good offhand, then that lowers the value of the hammer, and the offhand is a bit more annoying to get, because really this is kind of like the only good offhand at this phase, and you're going to want to be like, you're gonna want to have this offhand if you're gonna use a main hand at all, right? If you're gonna use a main hand offhand, so you're gonna have to do emp runs, and emp runs can actually be very annoying to run at this phase of the game, because not many people actually need Emperor, because they moved what do you call it? The warrior trinket, warrior rogue trinket, the Hand of Justice, that is now on Angerforge, right? So, yeah, it's just it's hard to find emp runs. They're long. Sometimes the runs you're gonna find for them, it's like the group is kind of scuffed because not many people need it, right? Also, you could be like, well, I need the gloves from Princess as well, but a lot of people want to save the Princess for the quest, so it's actually difficult to find a run that's going to Emperor and actually killing the Princess where you have a chance at this and the Hands of the Exalted, right? So both of those things can be really annoying, and you can easily skip this by just doing the Archivist. If you do the Archivist quest in Strat Live, which I think is the one, or it might be an Undead Strat quest that rewards the helm I was talking about. I could do a specific video on that if you guys need help with that. But if you do the Archivist quest, I know for sure in Strat Live, it unlocks a quest where the next time you go into Strat Live, you kill the last boss, you get his head. So you get Balthazar's head or whatever he's called. You accept that quest, you turn in at Light's Hope, and then it gives you another quest to kill Baron Rivendell. And you bring his quest back, or you bring his head back to Light's Hope, and you turn that in, and then it gives you another quest where you just talk to somebody at Light's Hope, and then you talk to another person inside the chapel, and he basically gives you a reward from the stash. And one of the rewards is a 2-hand staff that has like 30 int, 9 spirit, and some stamina on it. It's a really good Pre-BiS staff in my opinion. And the good thing about Pre-BiS staffs as opposed to Pre-BiS one-hands is when you're first going into the raid, you can actually put plus healing, or you can't put plus healing on your one hand, right? Because the recipe isn't out yet, right? It drops in Molten Core. And you can put +9 int though on a staff pre-raid. So you actually can have an enchant on your staff, which you wouldn't otherwise be able to have on your one hand, right? So you're actually getting a whole extra 9 free int by using a staff, which you're not gaining using the one hand, 2-hand combo, right? So again, if you can get this combination, it's pretty good, but it's kind of hard to get both of these things. Even getting the hammer sometimes, if you can't find people that want to do the chest run to do like for the vault, then it's a little bit annoying because you have to get this from chest to the 7. And again, not many people go that far into the instance. And when you do go, you only have a chance to get it, right? So just another alternative option. You could go there instead of these, right? Hands of the Exalted, basically the same thing as the Royal Scepter, right? It's just hard to get these. It's actually even harder to get these because you're always killing the Emperor when you do an Emp run, right? But you're not always killing the Princess because a lot of people want to save her, which means it's very difficult to get these sometimes because you have to kill the Princess and they have to drop. Now, I think they have a good drop rate, which is good, but it's just annoying and a big time investment to get these. So, but they are good. I will say these are like one of the items where it is kind of worth putting in a little effort to get them since they are kind of good. They're definitely one of the better Pre-BiS items. There's no like wasted stat like Stam. It's just healing, intellect, and spirit, so that's really nice. But they are very annoying to get. So if you're struggling to get these, I would just get a Magister's Gloves or Devout Gloves. And I think, those are both like reasonable options. You can get the gloves from Undead Strat too, in like the first part of Undead Strat that are like 5 MP5 and some intellect. You can also get the gloves from BRD that are like 14 intellect and 3 MP5. I would say that the best gloves are from Undead Strat aside from these, unless you're obviously talking about using the Magisters or the Devout Gloves to get a set bonus, in which case that those gain a little bit more value, right? But yeah, I wouldn't go crazy trying to get these gloves. If you find a run, great, but don't sit in LFG all day trying to find a Princess run, basically where you kill her. And something to note just about a couple of these items. So I'm going to go back really quick. So with the wrist slot here, you're going to be replacing this with an MC item. You're not replacing everything in here with an MC item necessarily. So these get replaced with your tier 1, which is actually really good. Like your tier 1 braces are super good. So again, it doesn't really matter these shouldn't be long for this world, right? You should be replacing these in short order, hopefully, especially if you're Horde, because there's less loot scarcity for Priest on Horde. Same thing with Horde here for your weapon. You're going to get Benediction, right? So again, getting this, not really the most insane thing in the world. And with these, the Priest Tier 1 gloves, in my opinion, are actually pretty good. So again, this is another item where it's annoying to get and not long for this world. So just some notes on those items. It's actually going to be the same thing with the belt here. This belt is fine, but the Priest Tier 1 belt is really good, so you're going to be replacing this eventually. And this one's relatively easy to get, I think, for the most part, although casters may roll against you for this, but they mostly want Banthok from the arena. But if they don't have Banthok yet, they may try and take this from you. If you have a tough time getting this, just get a Devout or Magister's belt, and it's basically like the same thing, arguably better, I would say, because there's just a lot more int on it. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on belt slot. These are pretty good. I would say that you kind of want these, and they're very easy to get because they're a healing only item, right? So I would definitely take these. These are pretty good. They can be annoying to get from Rend, but you can also do Rend runs and stuff like that, right? So, and they drop kind of frequently. So if you can get these, great. You can also get the Omnicast boots, right? From what do you call it? You can get the Omnicast boots from BRD, right? So either those or these work perfectly, and yeah, I would just try and get these, but if you can't, those are other good options. Forging Seal, this is obviously super easy to get and really good. For Blood Clot Band, you can use Blood Clot Band or the Princess Ring. It's going to be really easy for you to get the Princess Ring because most people want to do Princess at least once. So doing Princess at least once to get the other, like the Princess Ring, I think it's like 7 int, 4 spirit, 18 healing and damage, right? I mean, that's good. So basically either one of these is like the same. This is like a little bit better, I would say, the overall stat package, but both of them work. So your rings are very deterministic, very easy to get, so you don't really have to worry about any of that. You don't have to worry about the rings being bait because they're just super easy. Second Wind is pretty easy to get, in my opinion, because you can, like, running the arena, or like running the BRD loop, which tends to be the Arena, Angerforge, and Golem Master or Golemancer or whatever. That little core run is all useful for you if you're a new character, right? Because you can get Blood Clot Band. It doesn't help. You can even get Banthok Sash if the mages don't need it, right? You can get some extra spell damage gear. You can get the gloves from the Spider. You can get Second Wind. You can get Omnicast boots, right? So there's a lot of items that kind of benefit you from doing that loop. So in my opinion, it's worth it to get Second Wind because you're getting other useful items for yourself along with it. And it's a healer only item, right? So you're not going to be contested on this at all. That's another thing to keep in mind when you're kind of going after stuff on this list, right? Is that anything that's spell damage, which we're going to talk about in a moment, is contested between you and casters. So something like this won't be contested, which is really great. The wand slot right here, this is a mistake. This is not in the game in phase 1, I believe, even though it says P1 there. So I just use an int wand, or you can use a plus healing wand or a spirit wand. Any of the above work. I would honestly use an int or a healing wand over a spirit wand, but it's basically just whatever you can get your hands on there. And then finally, the biggest bait of all time, in my opinion, is Briarwood Reed. So this item on a healer specifically is Gigabait. It's obviously kind of like the best thing you can have in this slot at the time for Pre-BiS, but I'm going to first of all, you have to actually find the lockout. Now, people nowadays are more like apt to find Jed. I feel like this is like it's a well-known, very common thing. So you can just curate your UBRS runs to have Jed, and you should, right? Because you want to give yourself a chance at this item. And you're going to have to go into UBRS anyway at least a handful of times to do the Ani attunement. So, you know, you're going to want to find Jed runs for those runs that you do. But then it has to drop. It doesn't have the highest drop rate. I've actually seen it drop quite a bit, but it doesn't have a super low drop rate, but it doesn't have the highest drop rate on the table. And realistically, it's just not that good. You can get the Blasted Lands MP5 trinket, right, to kind of like fill in for this. If you don't have another trinket slot, it's like 5 MP5, 5 HP per 5. I don't know that I would necessarily say it's better than this, but it's not like significantly worse, right? So it's not really worth investing a ton of time to get Reed. If you can get like another trinket deterministically with relative ease. And on top of that, when Dire Maul comes out, this is very easily the trinket you replace, right, for the Dire Maul trinket. I mean, you could replace Second Wind, but they're basically kind of like the same thing. So it's just easier to not invest the time to get Reed and then get the DM trinket, in my opinion, right? And Dire Maul is probably going to be coming out pretty soon. Also, if you end up getting Shard of Scale from the raid, it's like much better than either of these trinkets, right? So yeah, and also with Dire Maul coming out, you can get I think even the 8 MP5 trinket is much better, or the 11 MP5 one, I think it is, right, from that boss. I forget what he's called. It's like a 10% drop rate or something. So those are all much better options. And there's also other good stuff for you in DM West as well. Both for like Shadow, for off-spec, for farming in the world, as well as for healing, like I said, the Cosmic Cloak, right? So there's going to be reasons why you're going to want to be in Dire Maul West to begin with. So yeah, I think like over-investing time into trying to get Reed is just not good. If you are going to get Reed, make sure you do rend runs. Like if you're specifically focusing on Reed, because you're kind of trolling if you're doing like pure full UBRS runs, you know, just to get this item. And just like the problem is in a 10-man raid, right, you're going to have at least probably like one other healer, like at least 2 other casters, probably 3 or 4. So realistically, you're rolling against like 4 to 6 people for this. It's just bad, right? It's very difficult to get. What sometimes people will do is they'll join a group where, or it'll be like a guild group where you're basically just running it until everybody gets it. But that's also a huge time investment, right? Whether you get it first or whether you get it last, because you're kind of expected to stay for the whole time. So yeah, I wouldn't, don't prioritize getting this at all. It's a super big bait, and it's the biggest bait on the list. This is actually the reason the video exists, is to basically say that this item is I would say the biggest healer bait for Priest, especially in the game. But yeah, so I hope you guys kind of learned something from this video. And I think if you follow this, you'll be able to kind of spend your time much more efficiently. And before we dip out of here, the other part we were supposed to answer, right, is, well, what do you get instead of kind of spending your time doing this? And I think just kind of farming gold is the best thing you can do for consumes, really. Or farming dark runes, stuff like that, right? A dark rune is going to make 12, like, you know, like having enough dark runes to use when you need them to get your mana back in spots in the raid is going to make way more difference than having a Briarwood read. Having ample mana pots to be able to pot anytime you need, right? Having a flask in the raid, having the extra 2k mana. Like, all these things are way, way, way more effective than Briarwood read is going to be, right? So make sure you have all your consumes and stuff. That's going to be that, like, consumes, especially in the early game, are one of the most effective ways to increase your performance, essentially, right? Nothing is going to compete with a mana pot on a 2-minute cooldown or a dark rune on a 2-minute cooldown. Just nothing. Nothing is going to compete with an extra 2k mana from a flask. It's actually going to be a little bit more than that when you factor in the priest talents, right? So just nothing is going to yeah, like nothing is gonna compete with that. Essentially, it's just the best thing you can do is be consume ready. Okay, so if you have to make a choice between investing time in getting consumes and investing time in perfecting your pre-BiS, definitely invest time in making gold, getting consumes, because a lot of this stuff is going to be immediately replaced very quickly anyways, either via stuff in the new phase that you can farm via dungeons or via raid gear, right? And the consumes are going to help your performance way, way more than any individual item on here. So yeah, thanks for coming to my gear TED Talk, I guess. And hopefully this allows you to manage your time more effectively, which will allow you to have way more fun leading up to and playing on raid day. So thank you guys so much. Hope you enjoyed this one, and talk to you guys later.